finally gave the Ringers Philly Crew a podcast. I'm Ben Solak.
And I'm Sheil Kapadia. That's right, just a couple of Philly guys with a new space to fire off some Eagles takes, get caught up in the Sixers chaos, and more.
We'll be coming to you twice a week on Sundays and Thursdays, plus bonus episodes whenever we get breaking news or Philly drama.
Join the fun and follow the Ringers Philly special now on Spotify.
This episode is brought to you by Anytime Fitness. We may talk a whole lot about sports, but when it comes to keeping fit ourselves, there's definitely room for improvement. I hit this point early July. I was just like, I am not in good enough shape. I started trying to walk at least 15,000 steps a day or hiking or just anything to keep my legs moving. Now it's the end of 2023. I feel great. I had a physical 3 weeks ago and the guy was like, you're doing great. You're doing better than you were 3 years ago. I felt great. Whatever your goals are, progress is possible thanks to Anytime Fitness. Get a personalized plan and support from an expert coach anytime, anywhere. Visit anytimefitness.com to try Anytime Fitness for free. Start to train for your life. Terms, conditions, and restrictions apply. See website for details. This episode is brought to you by Read, Write, Own, Building the Next Era of the Internet, a new book from entrepreneur and startup investor Chris Dixon. If you're listening to this podcast, you know what it's like to be part of a community of fans. You value the people who play, perform, and create for everyone. Well, what if there are more ways to support them, more ways to be a fan? And what if you had even more ways to connect with the teams, artists, and other creators that you love? Even though creators make the internet valuable, how much value do they get for their work? Well, that's mostly up to a few big tech companies. Shouldn't creators get more from the platforms they make successful? More value, but also more say, more control, more ownership? Read, Write, Own explores an alternative future for the internet, one that reclaims control for creators, fans, listeners, and gamers, the people who not only use the internet, but make it useful. Read, Write, Own imagines an internet built by us for us. So order your copy of the book today or learn more at readwriteown.com.
Thank you for listening to the Ringers NBA Draft Show. My name is Kevin O'Connor, and I'm joined once again today by my good friend and colleague, Kyle Mann. What's up, Kyle? How you doing?
Doing pretty well, Kev. I'm just hanging out. A lot of basketball going on right now. A lot of Thanksgiving. Always a nice cluster of all levels of basketball, and I've been staying busy. It's just been a treat. Like high school, college, NBA. It's a buffet, man. It's a smorgasbord.
Oh, it's a lot of basketball. I'm feeling under the weather, unfortunately. I was going to be going to the UCLA Pepperdine games, and I had a lot of NBA draft prospects in that, but I'll be staying home instead. Thankfully, for Thanksgiving, it's just going to be my mom and I. Don't have to not see family or friends. Did not get a Friendsgiving invite anyway. But, but I wouldn't have been able to go. Not feeling great. Got a little head cold that my mom had last week, but it is what it is.
Did you say mom? Did you say mom?
That's the way I pronounce her name.
You're British?
I don't know. It's the way I've pronounced it my whole life. It wasn't until pretty recently, a couple years ago, someone said to me, you pronounce it mum instead of mom? Mom? I've never done mom. I think it's a regional thing.
Really?
Northeast.
You think so? There's other people that live up your way that do that? Well,
yes.
Kev, I hope you get invited to a Friendsgiving, but you're not healthy enough to go. So just get healthy. Thank you for being responsible and protecting the vulnerable immunocompromised folks we got out there. You're a good guy.
Absolutely. No, I mean, I've always been this way when it comes to head colds. You're not feeling well, stay home. And besides, Kyle, there's a lot of basketball to watch. On Tuesday night, we're going to start off talking about an NBA game and some of the players on the Kings and the Grizzlies and their development, what we've seen from them in the NBA ever since they got drafted. The Kings won their 7th in a row. The beam has been lit again 7 times in a row, 113-109 over the Grizzlies. Really snuck away with the win at the end of that game. Really weird ending with Ja Morant whispering in the ear of Malik Monk that missed free throws. He made both, and then Ja missed his. So last night, though, Kyle, the guy I want to open up talking about didn't have the highest scoring game. Domantas Sabonis, only 9 points on 8 field goal attempts. He had 8 assists, 13 rebounds. Now on the season, after they traded Halliburton for him, he's averaging 17 points, 11.1 rebounds, 6.1 assists, to only 2.3 turnovers. The Kings are leading the entire NBA in dribble handoffs. This is the stat I mentioned on the mismatch a couple weeks ago. Nearly 40 handoffs per game, according to Second Spectrum. Sabonis leads the NBA with nearly 18 dribble handoffs logged per game. This is a guy in college who averaged under 2 assists per game at Gonzaga. And for him to turn into the guy that he has here in the NBA, for the Kings, obviously, of the utmost importance for them with the way they run their half court and the way they run their offense in the half court. But I couldn't have seen him ever turning into this guy that we see today. Were there any signs of this from him at Gonzaga, based on where he is today with Sacramento and has been for some time with Indiana?
In terms of the volume, no. Like you said, he didn't indicate the volume. You have to kind of look for little indicators, I guess, of feel and to watch his... the lazy thing to do would be to look at who his father is and to say he's probably among... If you consider going for era, I mean, Jokic totally piggybacks off of what Arvydas Sabonis was. The lazy thing you could do is say, yeah, in terms of feel, I would assume that the hours that he had in terms of like being acclimated to basketball, being the son of one of the smartest centers who ever lived, you would assume that he would have a leg up on everybody there. But in terms of the types of offense that they ran, I don't know. It could be a case of he wasn't surrounded. Maybe the players just didn't dictate the style. They had a really ground and pound kind of Gonzaga team those 2 years that he was there with Karnowski. Kyle Wiltshire was a little more of like a stretch four. Yeah, you just have to kind of go in the weeds and watch the clips of the plays where he did do it, and I think he did show indicators of the bounce passes off of cutters. But I think one of the key things here that is important about the DHO stuff is that Sabonis is just like a fantastic screener. I mean, the screening is a huge part of the separation that I think makes it easier on some of like the finesse guards, like the fast sort of skill dependent kind of. Like, you wouldn't look at Herter, you wouldn't look at Monk, you wouldn't look at De'Aaron Fox and say those are power guards, right?
No.
Right. Well, I'm just saying they're sort of skill kind of guys that get in the lane and things like that. So I think that his skill set really lines up with that. And I was looking at like the screen assist for him in the past few years, second in 2021-22, and he was first in 2020-21, and he was also first the year before that. So this is a guy that just gets he makes a lot of hay out of being like a really clever angular screen setter, and he can make a lot of those simple passes over the top, bounce passes, kickouts. He flips the floor really, really well. And I think that's kind of a common denominator among like great ball movement teams is having somebody in the middle of the floor who can reverse the ball and to have a sense for when to do that. I think that's kind of why he's had so much success with this like group of players that Sacramento has.
Yeah, Sacramento is absolutely put around Sabonis and Fox. I mean, Fox is the guy from the perimeter, pick and roll, slasher type. Sabonis more of on the elbows. They're able to get creation from different areas of the court, but all of the sort of supporting pieces help each other. Barnes, Murray, Herter, Monk, even a guy like Trey Lyles playing pretty good minutes off the bench for them. Davion Mitchell, all these guys who can play with and without the ball, high IQ players, movers without the ball. And it all works with each other because with Sabonis, he can be, like you said, he's a fantastic screener. He can be the guy setting a high pick and roll screen for De'Aaron Fox and then rolling hard to the rim or short rolling and picking apart the defense in the pocket there. Or it can be someone who kind of just hangs out on the perimeter, gets the handoff, Herter comes around the screen, hits a three, Murray comes around, attacks the basket. All the pieces for Sacramento are working, and they play it's like such a crisp, fast pace in the half court. They're like when people talk about speed and playing fast, it is transition. You know, they do that. They really push the pace, get a lot of transition opportunities. But in the half court, they just play fast. And with Sabonis, you know, I was rewatching some of his stuff at Gonzaga, and I looked back at my pre-Ringer draft guide in 2016, and just some of the notes I had for him in there. Nonstop motor, hustles on both ends, has a high basketball IQ, has a natural sense of space and feel for the game, tough competitor, advanced post scorer, great finisher in the paint, improved passer, can make the easy play, kick out from the low post, makes quick decisions and cut down on his turnovers. It's like you said, Kyle, you nailed it. The signs were there with him, but you never could have seen the volume of what he's doing now as one of the highest usage, you know, elbow post creators. That's surprising to me for him to be doing this at his level. So And that makes us think about the 2023 draft. If you're projecting forward some of the prospects in the 2023 class, are there any types of players that show some of the signs or the qualities where they could someday be kind of a playmaking hub like we see from Sabonis for previously Indiana and now Sacramento?
I don't know that there's anybody that I'm sure you remember the guy, Cam Krutwig, the guy that played for Loyola Chicago. I remember we talked about him on the NCAA tournament. There's nobody like that I think is like just wheeling and dealing at like a wild rate in the high post. Like there's nobody that jumps out like that. But I don't think that means that talent isn't there, because like we said, like Sabonis is an indicator that like if a guy is translating from the college to the NBA game, they might have to adjust what they're good at and that, lean into a certain skill set and say like, I can work at this. And I think like everything in basketball, like really good players usually sequentially build on their skill sets in a way that makes sense. And I think that like the foundation for Sabonis there made a lot of sense. So just leaning into that and thinking about guys that are in the league that show those types of indicators. One guy that he's a little erratic. This guy's probably more of a PJ Washington type without the shooting. Is Tracy Jackson Davis for Indiana. Is a guy that stayed in college, really good athlete. Like I said, the shooting isn't there. He's somebody that I could see becoming like a mid-post kind of screener if he's not going to be a shooter, because I think he's going to be a lob threat. Another guy that I think is interesting, and this is sort of like an aesthetic, probably biased thing, but Hunter Dickinson for Michigan, actually misspoke there. He, another like big-bodied guy that I think is going to have to kind of find some niche skills to translate to the next level. He can be a little wasteful in his passing. He can turn the ball over as much as he assists, but he's somebody that kind of shows some indicators. And then Janai Broome is a guy that plays for Auburn that I think has some good feel and shows some ball skills.
None of them first rounders though, right?
I don't really see any of those guys as first rounders. Yeah.
So nobody then in the first round then. Like we're talking, sleeper types, second rounders who maybe carve out a role in the NBA, but unless it's a Wemby, who gets empowered to do that, which he can do everything.
Yeah.
There's really not a guy in the first round that stands out as a big. We talked about Filipkowski last week, and he's not really that type.
He could, I think you're assuming a lot, but I think there are three. I wrote this in our outline, but I think there are like kind of three different types of bigs that you can kind of like run offense through. Like the first one is just offense that sort of responds to a big time score, the way that, Joel Embiid passes out. And then there's the guy who can like create theirs, but
drawing doubles, right? He draws double teams and that's what generates offense.
Sure. Yeah. And then there are the guys that are like a fulcrum between two like perimeter scorers or three, they kind of the pieces orbit them, but they're not necessarily a dominant scorer, which is more of like the Bam Adebayo, the Draymond, the Nurkic types. And then there's the dudes that can do both at a high level, which is Jokic. There's nobody like Jokic in the draft, in my opinion. And I think we're more likely to see the guys in that middle space where Sabonis, where Bam, where Nurkic lives. So those are kind of the three types. Wemby could be an Embiid type that his offense is so good that his passing responds to the gravity that he pulls. But we're kind of early in seeing that stuff, right? He's
shown some flashes, with those little touch passes inside. There's a little bit of creative flair from Wemby. I mean, I could see it, maybe not, but definitely not at the Jokic extreme. I mean, he is an outlier of all outliers. But in the Sabonis, stratosphere, it's not like Sabonis is some creative savant out there as a playmaker. He's just a good, rock-solid creator. He makes great decisions. He minimizes mistakes. He puts the ball on target. He knows where to be, when to be there. He knows how to run sets and just really just run an offense in his role as a big. I could see Wemby going down that path, but maybe not because he's such a dynamic scorer. Maybe you want him in the Embiid role.
Yeah, and he's more face up too. I think those are just kind of different skill sets. And another part of this is like having the sense of when to attack mismatches, even though these guys aren't dominant scorers. Like if Bam gets a good mismatch, he'll attack it and he'll go score. And that's kind of like the balance of having the sense of when to do that and when to pass. Some of those guys I mentioned, there are a few like upside guys that I think are really interesting. I sent one to you, Jalen This is just one. This is a deep bargain bin one. Jalen Slauson for Furman is an excellent passer. I think people should go check him out, the way he plays out of the post. But he's kind of an oversized jumbo physical wing. He's not necessarily a big.
Small ball type.
Yeah. And Justin Mutz for Virginia Tech, great name, is also another good passer. But those are just a few off the top.
With bigs in the NBA right now, I mean, in this upcoming class, obviously Wemby has everybody's attention. We've talked a little bit about Derek Lively, Kel'el Ware with Oregon. Neither of those guys tend to fit into the bucket that we're talking about here. On the other side of the matchup last night with Sabonis was Steven Adams. In the 2013 draft class, I wasn't a big fan of Adams. He's somebody who improved so much athletically in the NBA with the way he moves his feet. Granted, he is still a bruising big man. Compare it to what he was in college, it's on another level. The fact he's still in the NBA right now, granted
he's
not even in his 30s yet. He's only 29 years old and feels like he's 35.
We always do that with him. I've talked about that before. We'll be like, Steven Adams, he's like 35, right? It's like, no, he just played immediately. I mean, he wasn't far behind Sabonis in screen assists if you look throughout the years. I mean, I'm looking at 2020 here, and he averaged 4.8 screen assists per game. He's kind of, if you just turn the dial down a little bit, but a pretty good over-the-top passer, one-handed kind of baseball passes to cutters and things. Yeah.
Strange with guys like him, Kyle. I mean, we see, Hibbert's out of the league, been long out of the league, but a guy like Adams still feels like a relic with his bruising interior style. There's not a lot of dudes like him. I mean, Zubats has turned himself into a hell of a player for the Clippers. Very good defensively, rock solid offensively. Brook Lopez, it's been cool to see him evolve. Goes from this interior post scorer type to now screen and roll, occasionally pummel teams in the post, but shooting threes, has become a DPOY candidate. Guy like him adding value, extending his career. Adams hasn't evolved like that necessarily. He's still somebody, his greatest value is during the NBA regular season. 30 minutes per game last year, cut in half to 16 in the playoffs from Memphis. This year, I'm sure it'll follow a similar trajectory. Insane value over the long 82-game season next to Jaren Jackson Jr., but then maybe depending on the matchup, if it's against Jokic, he'll play more. If it's not, maybe we see him more of a specialist role. So, we talked about Oscar Tshiebwe out of Kentucky last week. He's somebody that could maybe fit that role. Granted, he's not a passer like Steven Adams.
No, he is not.
No, definitely not at all. We do want to talk about some other guys who can pass the ball, though, from last night's game. John Morant and De'Aaron Fox. It goes without saying how sensational these guys are. Lottery picks have turned themselves into, Morant, an all-star, Fox, maybe an emerging all-star this season. Coming out of college, their speed, athleticism, all that's obvious. What they could become is a downhill scoring threat. At the time, with them, the concern was their jumpers. I didn't know what level they could reach, and you could argue that they are who they are. Morant in college was 34% from three, 81% from the free throw line. Fox in college was 25% from three, 74% from the line. At this point, Morant is 34% career catch and shoot three, Fox 36%. Morant, 33% career off the dribble, Fox, 30%. It's not like these guys have become elite level shooters, but they're good enough to earn their respective defenses. And that's what makes me think of the Thompson twins. We talked about them in our first episode, in introduction to the 2023 draft class, with the jumper being the number one point of concern for them. How good do they have to be? Like, they have more height than Fox and Morant. They're not perfect comparisons, but the downhill attacking, slashing, playmaking, there's shades of them in Fox and Morant. Like, how important actually it is them based on the Fox Morant bucket is it for them to actually develop those jumpers, Kyle?
I think if they want to be primary options, it's very important. Searat and I were talking about on The Answer, which on Tuesday we were talking about the development of John Wall and what the NBA was like when fast point guards were coming in, back in 2010-11, which was his rookie season. You didn't have to be a dribble pull-up shooter from three. I made the point that he logged like almost 900 pick and rolls his first two years in the league, and he only shot 14 threes in those pick and rolls, so which is crazy. But today, I think they're a little bit different because Fox and Morant bend the defense with their speed. I kind of feel like I see Amen and Asar kind of being like second side creators, like the ball gets swung to them. If they're going to be primary kind of on ball guys, I do think that they're going to have to develop some semblance of a pull up jumper. I think the big thing for Fox and Morant is just they're dependable in the sense that if they come off like a couple dribble handoff options and they're the person that gets kicked to, it's a question of like how much of a mobile 3-point shooter are you? How much are you going to like chase your jump shot? They are sort of more like pressure release shooters, in my opinion. You know, you've seen what Fox has been like when his attempts have changed. He shot the ball a whole lot better, which is something I always thought would be true for him. But for the Thompson twins, I kind of feel like that's going to be the question for them is, you know, because if you can't shoot the ball, they're always going under, they're always going to drop, they're always going to sag because they want you to shoot the ball like that because you're a slithery super athlete, right?
I mean, that speaks to the difference between what we're talking about with Fox Morant. They're not knockdown guys, but they're not liabilities. Amen and Asar Thompson right now seem like liabilities from behind the arc. You know, I think for them, it's going to be, right now they seem like more of a supercharged Bruce Brown type. Like you see the way he interacts playing next to Jokic as a inverted screener, as a guard screening for Jokic, as a guy who's active cutting. Granted, he's become a productive 3-point shooter on a very tiny, low volume. You know, that's maybe the hope for the Thompson twins long term. I was hoping this year, after they revised their mechanics, their numbers would be better. Granted, it's a small sample size so far. They're not. Amen's 23% on 26 3-point attempts preseason and regular season combined. 71% on 41 free throw attempts. Asar is 24% on 25 3-point attempts and 67% on 30 free throw attempts. There's been no improvement there. It's early, but I do think despite the lack of a jumper, these guys are still talented enough that they can still be positive NBA players, which I think speaks to the Sabonis side of the conversation too. Like if you can get your creation from a big man, you can have a non-shooting guard / wing type, which is kind of the role you're describing for them as a second side option, right, Kyle? Like, is it more about the fit with the Thompson twins right now if they aren't able to develop their jumper more so than anything else to maximize what they can be?
Well, if they're not going to be able to maximize their jumper, yeah, it's going to be a huge hindrance on their role because, you know, you're going to go, like I said, you're going to go under, you're going to drop, you're going to be able to crowd them. I just don't, it limits sort of the scope of what they can be. But, you know, that's just talking about the offensive side of the ball. You know, if they want to be second side, you know, just wide open 3-point shooters who can like attack a closeout, I don't think there's any, like we said, they're going to be elite athletes from day one. I don't know who's going to stay in front of those guys if you get the floor flipped and they're attacking you. That's terrifying to think about. And they've shown a little bit of passing, but, you know, the defensive side of the ball is also important. You know, they have the physical tools to do that. I don't know. It's all kind of a piece of a bigger equation. You know, you have to find pluses to stay on the floor like we were talking about, but it does limit what they can be as on-ball guys as compared to Fox and Morant.
It'll be interesting to see where they end up going because, you know, they're young kids, superb athletes, but in last year's draft, we see somebody like Sacramento take Keegan Murray ahead of some of those other more higher power, Jaden Ivey, Benedict Mathurin, athletic guard types. Keegan Murray, despite being in his 20s, is just the rock solid, do-it-all forward who can shoot threes, attack closeouts, play smart, you know, play versatile defense. Keegan Murray, you know, as an upperclassman, rises into the top 5. Are there any guys this year that could maybe not rise into the top 5, considering how strong it is up top, but maybe rise into the lottery? I know his brother Chris, you know, is playing very, very well this season. Maybe the upside isn't there, but it's intriguing nonetheless that he's filling those shoes.
It's pretty eerily similar, actually. Yeah. 23.8 points per game, 1.5 assists. That was the thing John would always joke about, was just that you get that much offense without like anything running through you and not being on ball. And then the big thing here is 47.8% from 3 on 5.8 attempts. So, I mean, he is a knockdown shooter. It kind of makes you, I don't know that he's going to ascend into the lottery the way Keegan did, because this draft, it has a lot of talent. So I don't know that that's going to happen. I don't know. Do you have anybody you think could rise into the lottery is kind of off the radar, that's an upperclassman? Because it's very, if
not
you look,
at the forward spot.
Yeah.
No, not at the forward spot this year, I don't think. But no, Chris Murray definitely has a shot for the same exact reasons as Keegan. 6'8", solid defense. There's really like no reason why not as you're building the case, other than the fact that there are so many talented younger underclassmen. Like we haven't even talked about Gigi Jackson on this podcast. Like we haven't talked about him. We'll talk about Brandon Miller a little bit later. We talked about him before too. There's just Anthony Black on Arkansas. We'll talk about him in a bit here. There's just so many good freshmen or sophomores this year. There's just more players to climb past. And speaking about Keegan Murray, next week's episode, we're going to do a redraft of the 2022 draft. Way too early redraft. I'm looking forward to doing that, especially given how well guys like Benedict Mathurin are playing so far. Jaden Ivey filling in for Cade Cunningham being hurt. And one more guy from last night's game we got to talk about, Kyle. Kevin Huerter.
Yeah, baby.
Kevin Huerter.
The butcher's
KD
boy.
just said he's playing like Klay Thompson. Last night, Kevin Huerter, 18 points, 6 of 10 from the field, 4 or 7 from 3. Continues crushing for the Beam Team, Sacramento Kings. Huerter, moving away from Trae Young in Atlanta, playing the best basketball of his life with Sacramento. What a joy it is watching him turn into the player that he has in the NBA.
I was joking with our buddy Ben Taylor about like, is there like a market inefficiency or like an edge that you can find by like getting guys who have played with Trae Young that like actually they're more valuable than we realize? Because anyway, that's just me taking a shot at Trae Young. No, we're kidding, folks. We're kidding, but seriously, a little bit. No, Huerter. I mean, Huerter's a better passer, I think, than Klay. Just to tack that on to what KD said. And I haven't been surprised. We both like Huerter. I know I really was a believer that he could add a lot more. But in terms of like guys in this class, I think you need to just say like, what are we talking about when we say that? We're talking about a guy that can really dependably hit, be a knockdown shooter. They have sort of versatile usage. You can play them off the ball. They can attack off the second side like we talked about, but they can also give you healthy on-ball stuff. Huerter has done that. Last year, Jalen Williams really popped to me. This is a skill I really, really, really value a whole lot. If you can find guys that played point guard earlier in their life, that usually works. Terquavion Smith for NC State is a guy that I think he's actually
he's nice. I like him. Yeah.
He's playing in a game tonight that I would check out if I were you guys. Taron Armstrong from Cal Baptist is a really, really talented passer. The shooting, I'm a believer in the shooting. We'll see about his pace and his things like that. That's an off the radar like NBA Academy guy that people should go check out if you get a chance. And then I'm kind of curious about like Jalen Wilson's kind of playmaking upside. If we think the shooting can be there, is he somebody that can be on ball full time? Those are a few guys that just kind of come to mind off the top of my head.
On Tuesday night, Kyle, we saw a absolutely sensational college basketball game between Creighton and Arkansas. Creighton won 90-87, 2 top 10 teams here. We're going to start off talking about the Arkansas side here because they have more NBA draft prospects that could be drafted high. One of them didn't play once again. We talked about Nick Smith during our introductory episode. He was just he warmed up. He was in a jersey, hype man on the bench. Didn't see him play though. Instead, we saw Anthony Black have his second consecutive stellar game. He's a 6'7" guard. He was the 14th ranked high school prospect RSCI. 26 points on 10 of 18 on Tuesday after 26 points on 9 of 11 on Monday. Feels like somebody who's finding himself with his size, playmaking, defense. What were your takeaways from Anthony Black so far this week, Kyle?
He looked really comfortable out there against Creighton. Creighton has a lot of mature upperclassmen on their team, and they guard together and move well and together as a unit. So I thought that this was going to be an interesting test for Arkansas. I did make the point that I think if these two teams play again, Arkansas is probably going to kick the shit out of them because you could kind of get that sense that like Arkansas was the little sloppy. They had these moments where they weren't composed or they made weird decisions. But one of the consistent things throughout the game, I think, is that like Anthony Black's pace really jumped out to me. I thought as a pick and roll player, I shared one clip with you. I thought he was really patient and like setting up screens. And then he was patient getting into the lane, which with his size, he kind of gives you that like floaty, like finesse kind of guard thing. But I don't think that's true. I think he actually has a body that could fill out and get a little bit bigger. But he made pretty good decisions, and on that one play, he made a pass to his roller. The guy bobbled it, which I don't think he should have. But he relocates to the wing, and then as a shooter, he had enough respect that he like went baseline and beat a guy, and then threw a floater over Kalkbrenner, who is Creighton's 7-footer, and made a tough shot. I just thought he looked like the most poised guy throughout the game for Arkansas. If they can get Nick Smith back, that two-headed monster of ball handlers is going to be really, really interesting to watch. I don't know if they're going to get him back.
Is that a scoop? You said you don't know if they'll get him back?
I don't have any hard kind of. They're just there's whispers out there, Kev. There are whispers about what's going on. I can't report because it's not solidly sourced, but I've heard some things. We'll just say that. So I don't know, but if they get him back, they're going to be tough as hell.
They could win it all if they get Nick Smith back.
Yeah, I think they could. I think that they can play a few different ways, but I think you hit on it that his feel jumps out to me. He looks really comfortable out there. He has a cross section of things that I like the size, the 6'7" thing. I kind of printed out kind of on the list of player types. Like if you use the season finder and the names, like for what I think he'll do in the NBA, and some interesting names kind of came up. I don't know. Did any of those jump out to you that you thought were like good comps? The Dinwiddie one I think is pretty interesting. Sort of a guy who maybe isn't a full-time ball handler, but has great size. You said Lonzo. What was your justification for that one?
I think with Lonzo, the combination of playmaking, size, that flair he kind of brings to the floor. I mean, Black is somebody who, you said it in that play. He runs a nice pick and roll, passes bobble, picks it right back up, relocates outside, attacks that closeout. He's just somebody who makes basketball plays. I know it's kind of like a cliche thing to say, but Lonzo was very much that way, where you surround Lonzo with good talent. He makes them better. They make him better. Anthony Black seems to be that type of guy too. There's a little bit of you have Evan Turner on your list as well.
That's not mine. That was just that popped up in the return. I wanted to talk about that with you.
It's like take the positive qualities from Evan Turner at his best.
Yeah.
And you get a solid player, right? I think with Anthony Black, he should end up being a better 3-point shooter over the course of time, which I guess is, a similar note with him compared to some of the other prospects we're talking about here. He seems to be, he's not a player like Ja or Fox, but he's unlike the Thompson twins in the sense that there's at least a level of confidence he's at least going to be a competent 3-point shooter. If not a knockdown elite guy, but he'll be good.
Yeah, I had it written down here. I think his shot will definitely have to adjust when he gets to the league. I think it's a little low and it's a little slow. Like
it's a stiff release kind of
his shot. Yeah, his shot arc, he's got a lot of he extends his arm really hard, and I would like to see that. I'd like to see that angle go up. And if a guy's making shots like that, you don't want to get in there and interfere too much. I'm not a shooting coach, but I just know that if he does need to kind of round out his consistency, I think there's some things there that they can work with. But I definitely think that he projects, I don't even know, maybe a Dyson. What do you think about Dyson Daniels as another kind of player?
That's an interesting one. That's
another one. Like he gives you the point guard skills like we were talking about, but maybe doesn't necessarily need to be full-time on the ball. Yeah. I could see Anthony Black rising in this draft as the year goes on.
Me too, absolutely. He kind of fits that NBA style with the ability to play with and without the ball. And I think he's also in an NBA context too. He's surrounded by the types of wings that an NBA team would want with Trayvon Brazile, 6'9" forward, outstanding length. Granted, it's early, shooting 44% from three this year, up from 33% last year. Dude, the dunk he had in the first half, amazing. Crazy athlete.
I had a thought. I don't like to, I know I'm going to, we were talking about comps. I get some John Collins vibes from Trayvon Brazile.
I'm into it. Yeah.
A 4.5 is what I'm kind of talking about. A guy who's athletic enough to roll with you a little bit, shoots it a little bit. I don't know. I see a little bit there.
How about with Jordan Walsh? 6'7", a little bit shorter, but still has an amazing wingspan. The dude's defense, like on Kaluma, that foul he got called for in the first half. That's so BS. I felt like he completely mirrored every single movement, blocked the shot, his closeouts. He looks like Shane Battier closing out on the perimeter.
Is it the sort of pale bald head thing with the defense?
I mean the way he moves. It's like he's every step he takes is so economical. It's so crisp on the defensive end of the floor, and it's not just like he's some fundamental guy. He's intense. plays hard. He's an energy guy. Walsh in Brazil, next to Black on the wing there. Some interesting NBA potential guys.
Yeah.
On that Arkansas team.
Walsh, like you said, the wingspan. He just makes easy things difficult. Like that's a big thing that you hear coaches talk about in defensive settings is that they want to disrupt your space that you feel comfortable in. And Walsh with that wingspan, he gets in there, he bothers dribble handoffs. Like you said, he moves his feet. His technique is just good. And if you think about his upside about where he could be a few years from now, I can see him just being a pain in the ass perimeter defender. And I think the shooting upside is there. Kaluma looked out of sorts a lot of the game. I think Kaluma.
For the listeners, who is Kaluma?
Arthur Kaluma is a wing for Creighton. He's a big guy. He's athletic. He's been playing really well, but he's more of a slasher. And as a ball handler, he actually played some high school ball with Shaden Sharp, and that's when he first caught my attention at Dream City Prep in Arizona. But he looked like he didn't want the ball at different points in the game because Walsh was pestering him so much.
Then other points he was doing way too much.
Yeah. Totally.
I feel like with him, downhill attacking, great athlete. We saw him make some spectacular defensive plays as well. But it's the more they put the ball in his hands, the clearer it is to me that he's more of a finisher type who's playing off of a creator. Too sloppy as a passer. Couldn't make an entry pass.
Yeah.
That's not going to be his game in the NBA if he pans out.
Yeah, he's kind of hypothetical right now, and that's what I've had some people tell me. He's probably a little bit away. I think since he's playing it, I don't know. They were talking about Creighton being a high major on the broadcast, and I was like, is Creighton really? I guess they are. Yeah, they changed conferences. I've always kind of thought of them as sort of like a right there teetering the line, like they are a high major. I think since he's at Creighton, I think people have kind of seen him as they're reading into it a little bit, maybe giving him a little more of a hype bump than he's ready for. I think he's just got some things that need to round out and polish, but he's definitely not off my radar. I'm still going to keep an eye on him.
Definitely not off the radar. He's got the body. He's got the potential for the game. We'll see how he develops over the course of the season. Was there anybody else on the Creighton side that you see some NBA upside?
My favorite guy on their team is Baylor Shireman. I've been a big fan of this guy for a while.
Dude can
big
shoot.
Lefty, 6'6", 6'7" wing. He's been one of the best shooting prospects of the past couple of years. He can shoot it with movement. We saw him pull up from the low. He was deep. It was probably 30-ish feet, right? That one. No conscience, no hesitation. I think he's a smarter. I was having some conversations. I really wanted this guy to come to Kentucky really badly. I thought that he was the thing that would have really been the connective thing to help their offense have some fluidity. They didn't go after him because they didn't think he could defend in the SEC. You signed Nate Sestina a couple years ago, so explain that one to me. But I think he's just a guy who gives you a lot of different things, really rebounds really well for his position. In the NBA, I don't know. I think he would probably get picked on defensively, but at the college level, he's a great player.
Needs to grow a lot on defense to survive. But the offensive ability's there, and he also does more than just shoot. He can pass a little bit too.
Oh, yeah.
He crashes the boards. He brings more offensive value than just a spot-up shooter, guy off screens. So I think he has a lot going for him. He'll get chances. But the defensive ability is what's going to make or break his odds in the NBA. Kalkbrenner is the other guy, defensive guy. I don't think he moves well enough. But, maybe he'll get a shot. And Nembhard in their backcourt, 6-foot guard, brother of Andrew Nembhard on the Pacers. 21 points last night, 9 of 12. Had a huge dunk. Looked like he was, really got up there as a 6-footer.
That was nasty.
Yeah, that was so fun.
What an atmosphere in that gym, man. I wish I'd been there. I know our guys Titus and Tate were there.
Mm-hmm.
God, I wish I could have gone to that game. It's
maybe next year.
When Maui gets rocking, man, it's like when that gym gets going, it just looks like one of the most fun environments that you can be in. I was thinking about that Gonzaga Duke game from a couple 2-3 years ago with the Zion and Brandon Clark.
Yeah, that was wild.
If you can get in there for one of those, man, it's it can be a little boring if you're seeing Chaminade play Arizona or something. But some of those big matchups early in the year, it's just so fun.
Maybe next year, Kyle, instead of doing a 2-hour drive to Indiana, could take a long flight to Hawaii.
Yeah, well, to come up with some Hawaiian content. Can you see us watching some draft in Hawaiian shirts? I'll probably have to work out a little bit if I'm going to be walking around in a Hawaiian shirt. But
yeah, same here.
It could be a good time. We'll see if we can talk anybody into it.
Let's move on to a new segment. My YouTube obsession. It's a Bill Simmons idea here, Kyle. The player that we just can't get enough of watching on YouTube. Emoni Bates. It's a player a lot of people are familiar with. He was a high school sensation. People compared him to Kevin Durant, Kevin Garnett. Just this highlight reel, dunking.
Did people compare him to Garnett? I don't remember.
The intensity, the screaming and the yelling and pounding his chest, setting a tone. The trash talk. Bates was a sensation, and then he just fell off a cliff. He didn't get better. He reclassified, went to Memphis, had a horrible year there, and then this summer, after going to Eastern Michigan, he gets pulled over by the police. They smell marijuana in the car. He has a gun in the car with altered ID marks, and it feels like in that moment his basketball career might be over, but he's playing for Eastern Michigan right now, and through 4 games, averaging 21.3 points, shooting 46% from 3, 52% from 2, 5 assists to 11 turnovers, not playing a lot of defense, but he's had some great moments. In his first game, he had 30 points against top 25 ranked Michigan. Since then, he hasn't hit those highs. 20 points against Bradley. Crowd was chanting overrated in the first half when he was 1 for 8. Then against Oakland, 19 points on 16 shots. Against Purdue, Fort Wayne, 16 points on 15 shots. It's been up and down, a lot of downs for Bates, but he's at least hitting the types of shots that first made people excited about him. Did we bury Emoni Bates too quickly, Kyle, as an NBA draft prospect?
I think it's been pretty fair because the things that we've seen, it's hard to hear a good word about the thing that happened at Memphis. There's a lot you could read into that about, like you said, he was young. This guy was, I've just kind of been worried about, I get worried when guys get on the radar too early and we just talk about them too much. I don't think that that's necessarily healthy for a kid all the time, depending on who they are. Not every situation's the same. I saw him when he was 15 years old. I've told this story. I saw him battle Bronny in Indianapolis. His shot making was ridiculous for a kid that age. It was like, he could do it all. It really just a dribble shooter. Could step back, could beat you off the dribble and pull up. He had range. He had a real flicky shot. But as we've gone on, the question is who are you? Or how are you growing? Where are you going? What kind of positions are you putting yourself in to grow? He played on a Ypsilanti team where he's from, and kind of the same kind of thing, inefficient volume scorer. The Memphis thing doesn't work out. He can't seem to get a rhythm with them, doing a lot of the same stuff, just dribble shooting. And that's what he's doing at Eastern Michigan now. He had that big game where he put up 30. Just takes a lot of tough shots. All the games that I'm watching, this is the telling stat. I love assist to usage, and for people, that just gives you an indicator of how many good decisions you make when the ball is in your hands. Anthony Black playing for Arkansas, his assist to usage is 1.013, which is really good. That means that pretty frequently you're doing something good with the ball in your hands. Emoni's assist to usage is 0.26. That is, for you to be that insistent of a scorer and not be a creator at all, you've got to be pretty damn efficient. There are guys in the league like Kawhi's had a lower number on that front, but he's such a good scorer, draws a lot of fouls. I'm just kind of wondering, every time I watch him, I don't know that I would call it my obsession, because I kind of get just frustrated watching him even still. He's dancing, they're down 30 points in late in the second half, and he's dancing with the ball and taking a contested shot from, with 22 seconds on the shot clock. And then the ball's in the air and he turns around and runs the other way before it hits the rim. And I'm just kind of like,
I love it. Kyle, it's funny. I get a kick out of it.
Your idea of what's funny has been kind of an interesting thing for me today. It doesn't agree with my sensibility, but like I said, when I watched Shaden last year, I felt a similar kind of feeling of frustration at times.
And I love Shaden. I was a big Shaden guy.
I guess the question, Kev, is just how real is this? We know that he can dribble shoot. He's done it pretty efficiently in high school, 36% at Memphis, 37.5%, 50% dribble shooter at Eastern Michigan. We know he can do that. What else is he, though? That's the question. It kind of reminds me of Marvin Bagley, where it's his dad ran his EYBL team. He was kind of shuttled from place to place and allowed to do what he wanted. Some cases that works. Like LaMelo, great player, great to play with. We had to kind of read into that. When we read into Emoni, do you think how long can he continue this? Is my question for you. I know I'm kind of raining on your parade a little bit.
I mean, I'm not saying I love him. I just like watching him. He's a bucket getter. The dude takes the most absurd shots. He's the guy in 2K, who's just taking every shot every time he gets a touch. He's not passing the ball. It's just fun to watch this guy just freelance out there on the court and take these contested jump shots. Does it translate to the NBA? Hell no.
Yeah.
Because for Bates, he needs to show that he can do more. Everything we've been talking about this whole episode, Kyle, about the NBA guys who have worked it out, about the college prospects like Anthony Black, like the assist to usage stat you mentioned is very telling. Anthony Black can do a lot when he gets touches, right? And he doesn't always need to be scoring because he can create for others. If Emoni is smart, that's what he would be trying to show. Hey, I can elevate this Eastern Michigan Eagles squad and make us competent. Instead, they're 1-5. The only game they won was without him. Oof. And earlier today, he played again. Did not mention these stats at the top. This was his worst game of the season. 15 points on 14 field goal attempts. Once again, no assists to 3 turnovers. With Emoni, I want to fall back in love with the idea of what he appeared to be in high school, with what it appeared that he could become. But even putting aside the decisions and all that, like he's listed as 6'10", but he's so lean, Kyle. He doesn't look 6'10" to me. Like there's not a 6'10" impact player there. He plays like a guy who's 6'4", 6'5". I don't see it. I was very surprised to see on Twitter, the first real mainstream, I don't know if I want to call it mainstream, the first popular Twitter account that I've really seen to mention Emoni Bates was Ball Don't Stop. Popular Twitter account, he said, Emoni Bates is a lottery pick NBA game. That surprised me. I think there's no way he's a lottery pick. You could talk about a team giving him a chance in the late first, maybe second round, but lottery pick, there's no way. No way.
I think he's a flyer. I think it's just too risky. I've also heard some like biomechanical stuff from people that know that's a little troublesome, just about his feet and his length and the way he runs and things like that. I'm not saying he is obviously a talented player. I think it's more of like, of the way that he's willing to play, what he's willing to sort of submit himself to in terms of like, buying into the other parts of the game, because that's what we wanted to see when he went to Memphis. Was we were like, hey, we want to see you play off of people. We want to see you move off the ball, use that shooting gravity that you have. Like Michael Porter Jr. is a guy who was really insistent on playing a certain way. He could justify it, because he started to show us some different things in his cutting and things. I think Emoni's a different type of animal. I'm not saying it can't happen. I'm in a pretty pessimistic place about it, is what I'm saying.
So you don't agree with Ball Don't Stop lottery pick? That's what you're saying.
You're poking me and prodding me. I don't know. I think there are different parts of the basketball internet that have value sets that I don't always like resonate with. I think there are people that kind of worship at the altar of self-creation. Self-creation's awesome, but I think that if it's not, if that's the only tool in your tool belt, and every nail that comes in front of you, or everything that comes in front of you gets hit with a hammer because you think, I'm messing up there, whatever. I just think if the only tool that you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. And I think that he is only willing to use a hammer at this point in his basketball life. So I would love to see Emoni diversify and do something else, because the shot creation thing alone is just not, he's ramming his head against the wall. This is like the 10th iteration that we've seen of it. It's the same story. They stink. They're not any better. There's a lot of stuff for Emoni to work on. I hope he does.
Sure is fun as hell to watch the highlights on YouTube. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, I poo-pooed it, didn't I?
No, it's a lot of fun.
It's not fun.
Let's move on to a player who is, we agree. It's very fun. The weekly Wemby. Our weekly Victor Wembanyama update. We talked last week about his performance for the French national team. He's back with the Mets 92. What have we seen from Wembanyama, Kyle?
I just put out a video about Wembanyama, actually. What have we seen from him lately? More of the shot creation stuff has been the story so far this season.
A little crossover on the left wing he had. Getting to the basket. That's
nice. The thing I probably could have gone into more in my video, but I didn't want to. I wanted people just to kind of understand the basic conversation about why people are excited instead of doing like a full-blown dive. Because I think we're going to I'd imagine we're both going to do full-blown Wemby dives at some point.
We should do a collab video. We should do like a 30-minute Wemby breakdown.
Yeah, we should.
Yeah.
We could do that. We could talk about that. Just have your people contact mine. I wanted to just kind of lay the foundation because one of the things that I've kind of been hearing more and more lately is, and tell me, I think the surging kind of presence of Bol has caused some of this to sort of like bubble up and fester. Have you seen some of this?
Oh,
people are like,
saying,
well, what's the difference?
Nobody like Wemby has ever existed now. What about Bol?
Yeah. I've been seeing that a little bit. And that's kind of what I set out in the video to kind of address that, like, he is similar to some 7-footers that have come along, some, 7'3", 7'4", 7'5" guys. What makes him different, things like that. So go check that out if you want my succinct thoughts on that.
For what it's worth, last game he did play was against his old squad, Nanterre. 30 points, a 9 of 14 from 2, 1 of 5 from 3, 9-11 from the free throw line, 9 rebounds, 5 blocks, no assists, 3 turnovers. Another dominant performance, though. Mets 92 won again, 92-85. They're rolling with Wemby. I look forward to continuing to watch them. Kyle, for Thanksgiving, I mentioned on Wednesday night tonight I was supposed to go to the Pepperdine UCLA game. I'm very sad I will not be going to that. But for Thanksgiving, still a lot of basketball games to be watching these next couple of nights. What are you going to be turning on TV tomorrow?
Kevin O'College. Alabama and Michigan State are going to be playing, which is going to be cool if you want to check out Brandon Miller playing against, a team that guards really well.
It's a big one for him. He's been spectacular ever since we spoke about him first episode, shooting the hell out of the ball.
Big time. Oregon UConn is interesting. Jordan Hawkins is a 6'5" wing, potential first rounder for them. And as we said, Oregon has some bigs, Khalil Ware and Pauly Dante. That'll be a good game. And then just Maui. Just continue to watch Maui. Arizona is really fun to watch, as we saw last night. They're putting up like 100 points a game right now. And they have Tubelis, Omar Ballo, and Courtney Ramey, who's a good player. And then the PK 85 tournament, which is going to be going on in Portland. There are a lot of good teams in that. Duke and Gonzaga chiefly among them. There's a lot of basketball to watch, college basketball, so it's going to be fun.
A lot to watch, Kyle. I'm looking forward to the next couple of days being buried at home, watching NBA, watching college, watching G League, watching international, watching OTE. There's a lot of basketball to be watching right now. It's good times. Kyle, this was a fun episode. Thank you, man.
Good to see you, man.
Thank you so much for listening to this week's episode of the Ringers NBA Draft Show. Thank you to Jessie Lopez for producing. Hope you have a great rest of your day.